Now in exercise 7D, we look at a loan. So try to be clear. In 7C, it was an investment and the amounts were building up. Now in 7D, it's a loan that we're looking at. Clearly, we're making payments. The payments would be the same amount. That is similar to 7C, but now our total amount owing on the loan is an amount that's coming down. I hope that's obvious. If you're paying off a loan, you want the amount that you owe to be decreasing. Ultimately, you'll want the amount that you owe to be zero, which is significant in the maths that we'll be working towards. So, just some terminology. We're going to use M for our regular payment. So you can use P for the amount borrowed, which would be similar, R for the rate. The most common question that you will get asked is about the actual repayment, the size of the repayment. You could also get asked to show the amount owing. So it's these two aspects of the loan that we've got to have really clear. Just before I get started with this example, I'm going to go to a document that I wrote out a little bit of an example. So if we had a loan of $1,000 and we were paying it back at some rate as a decimal 0.0R, and you can see I've set up a table now with 3 columns. This here is really, I guess, amount owing. Whoops. At the beginning, this is amount plus interest. And then this is the amount owing after we've made a payment of M. Now, just spend a minute going through these, talking about where these expressions come from. So we said the loan would be $1,000. If the interest is compound interest, which it will be, it'll be a reducing balance loan, which means you keep track of how much you owe and you only pay interest on what you owe. Then the amount owing will be P times 1 plus R. 1 plus R, 1 plus this, just put a 1 in front. And it's only owing for the one period of time. Then the total amount owing is our P times 1.0 R minus our payment. So what do we know? That becomes the amount owing at the beginning of our second period. So with this much owing, it makes sense that we need to work out the interest charge on that amount using a 1 plus R to the n. This is my A, this is the amount owing. And I know it's all a little bit awkward at the moment with all these letters in it, but I always say about maths, we're trying to get an equation. In this case, we're trying to get a series and we're trying to recognize some common terms and some patterns and terms. Because again, in this exercise, we're going to establish that we've got a GP. So with that in mind, I'm keeping everything. I'm not simplifying. If I started simplifying, I would lose valuable information and I wouldn't be able to see the pattern emerging. So what I did here was I expanded the bracket. It's like this black bracket, the square bracket, could just be a curved bracket. Multiply by 1.0r gives me p times 1.0r squared minus m times 1 plus 0r. Now, what do I know is going to happen at the end of this period? A payment is going to be subtracted from that. So you can see I've just got that amount and I've subtracted m. Now, keeping in mind that I'm trying to establish a GP. I'm trying to get a pattern that looks like a GP, a sum of terms that's a GP. I'm not going to include this 1.0r. I'm just going to keep it. P was the amount borrowed. 1.0r is 1 plus the interest, 1 plus r. The 2 is fine because I'm looking for patterns, I'm looking for connections, I'm talking about the second period, and I'm raising that to a bracket 2. And in fact, up here, I had p times 1.0r to the 1 after the first period. It will be nice if when I complete the third line, I get p times 1.0r to the 3, because that'll be very easy to identify, the amount owing being the amount borrowed times 1 plus the rate to whatever the period of time is as the power. And what I've done with these two terms then is I've taken out a minus m. I've taken out a minus m and I have swapped the order. And hopefully you can see why. So if I take minus m out of this term, I get a plus 1. Then out of this term, I get a plus 1.0r. I hope you can see there are two terms. I'm happy about that. It was after the second period. Two terms appearing here in a sequence. Is this sequence going to be a GP with A is equal to 1, R is equal to, put this over, 1.0R? Well, I certainly hope it is. That's ideally what we want. Let's do another line and see how we go. So I've brought that forward to here. I know that the interest, or I'm going to be charged interest on this amount. So I'll have p times 1.0r squared minus m times 1.0r. I square bracket that. That's likening it to putting the how much, and this being your 1 plus r, and we're only holding it for one period. So I've got my 1.0r to the 1. Now what I've done is, hopefully you can see, I've just worked on this bracket, and I have, so I've left the first term. I've expanded this out again, minus m times 1 minus m times 1 plus 0r, still needing to multiply by 1.0r. So that's what I do here on this line. So I'll have my p times 1.0r to the power 3, which I'm really happy about. Remember the highlighted 2's back there? Now I'm into my third period and I'm getting 3's, so I'm really happy about that. I've got minus m times a 1.0r and a minus m times 1.0r squared. I then have taken this and I have written it here. So I've got the 3 terms. And what do I know happens at the end of the third period? I make a payment. the minus m. Now, remember, we've got to do some rearranging. We're trying to get a pattern. We're hoping it's a series we recognise as a GP. I'm not going to do anything with this first term because I'm very happy to know that the amount owing at any time is the amount borrowed 1 plus r to whatever that period of time is. So let's see what we've got then. If I take m out of these 3 terms and write it the order I want, which is I'm going to take this m out first, I've got a 1. Now I'm coming back to take this m out, and I've got my 1 point r. And then I'm going to take m out of here, and I've got 1.0 r all squared. Why? Why have I written it like that? Because it is a GP, or a geometric series. A is equal to 1, r is equal to 1.0 r, and n at this point is 3. N is 3. There are 3 terms. I could sum those 3 terms if I didn't have an r in it, if I had substituted an r for a number, and I could calculate that sum, multiply it by the payment, subtract it from the amount borrowed times 1.0 r to the 3. So that is basically the pattern. I might stop the video and more quickly talk about the actual example in another video.